Imagine standing in a cave so old it predates Stonehenge and coming face to face with a figure said to be a witch turned to stone by a monk's curse. She's still there, watching. This is no fairy tale. Deep beneath the Mendip Hills, the Witch of Wookey Hole lingers, a legend carved in limestone and whispered about for centuries. From ancient bones to modern ghost sightings, this cave holds far more than rock and water. Tonight, we're going in, and she might just be waiting. Beneath the rolling hills of Somerset, past the quaint tea rooms and witchcraft and Wookey gift shops, there lies a darkness far older than the village itself. A place where silence settles as thick as fog, and shadows stretch a little too far. They say a woman once lived in the caves. A woman feared, hated, and finally cursed. A solitary figure whose bitterness outlasted death itself. And they say she still watches from the rock. Her eyes long turned to stone, but her spirit not quite so petrified. This is not a bedtime story. This is the tale of the Witch of Wookey Hole, a legend carved in limestone, soaked in superstition, and echoed by every whisper in the dark. And tonight, we're going inside. But before we can face the witch, we must understand the bones of her lair. Wookey Hole Caves are a vast and ancient limestone network, formed by the steady erosion of the Mendip Hills by the River Axe over hundreds of thousands of years. That gentle stream you hear trickling now, it's been at work longer than civilization itself. Carving chambers, hollowing tunnels, and sculpting cathedrals of stone in total darkness. These caves aren't just pretty holes in the rock. They are deeply haunted by time, and not just in the paranormal sense. Archaeologists have unearthed evidence that the earliest Paleolithic humans sheltered here over 45,000 years ago. Tools fashioned from flints, the bones of wild animals, charcoal from ancient fires, all tucked into shadowy alcoves far from the reach of the sun. Now I don't know about you, but if I were a caveman wandering Somerset in the Ice Age, I might also think twice before lighting a fire next to a giant stalagmite shaped like a woman, frozen mid-scream. But perhaps they hadn't met her yet. Fast forward several thousand years and Wookey Hole continued to attract all manner of human activity. During Roman times, it may have been mined or used for ritualistic purposes. In the medieval period, it became the stuff of local legend. By the Victorian era, it was already a tourist attraction. In the 1800s and early 1900s, parts of the cave were used for paper manufacturing. The cold, damp environment perfect for soaking and pressing pulp. Nothing like making your stationery in the company of the damned. Later still, the caves became a full-blown attraction. Lights were installed, tour guides trained, mannequins, disturbingly lifelike ones, were introduced. And of course, the witch herself became the star. Even today, Wookey Hole is a blend of tourist kitsch and geological marvel. You can find animatronic dinosaurs just a stone's throw from Neolithic artifacts. But despite the lights, the tours, and the ice cream shops, the caves remain undeniably eerie, cold and damp, silent in a way that presses on your anxiety. It is quite literally a place where light dies. And nestled within its heart, beside a stagnant pool and surrounded by centuries of damp, stands the stone. Something jagged, humanoid, reaching and watching. Locals call it the witch, but who was she? And why does her legend refuse to die? In 1912, a local archaeologist named Herbert Balch made a chilling discovery deep within the cave. Hidden among the stalactites and shadows, he unearthed the almost complete skeleton of an elderly woman, curled beside the remains of goats, a dagger, domestic tools, and a polished alabaster ball. Not your typical picnic. Though dating back to the Iron Age, the story practically wrote itself. An old woman, animal remains, ritualistic objects. It's no wonder people began connecting the dots. Was this the real witch? A misrepresented healer? or simply a burial lost to time. Even more startling, back in 1857, while digging the canal nearby, workmen stumbled upon prehistoric human remains, along with tools fashioned from flint and bones of long extinct animals, hyenas, woolly mammoths, rhinoceroses, and lions. Yes, even lions in Somerset. Many of these relics now reside in Wells City Museum, but a good number were kept right where they were found, in Wookey Hole's own on-site museum, just a short walk from the witch herself. It gives the place an unsettling continuity. Ancient man hunted here, prehistoric predators roamed here, and somewhere along the way, a woman died here. But here's the strangest part. The caves are still alive. Today, horseshoe bats hibernate here in the winter, sharing the space with frogs, eels, freshwater shrimps, and even a few million moths and mosquitoes who have chosen this underground lair as their holiday home. There are no fish in the dark waters, just cold, slow movements and eyes that sometimes glint without a light. The witch, it's said, still watches over them all. A stony matriarch of bats and bones, ruler of a kingdom beneath the hills, a guardian, or perhaps a prisoner. Whichever she is, she remains. Now, let's take a deeper look into the legend of the witch. Her story has drifted through generations like a smoke that won't quite clear. The details change, the names fade, but the fear remains remarkably intact. She's only ever known as the witch. Not Mary, not Anne, not even a surname, just the witch, which is a bit like calling someone the problem. According to local folklore, she lived here sometime in the 13th or 14th century, a reclusive woman who kept to herself in the upper chambers of the cave. She was said to have kept a dog and goats for company, foul of temper and sharp of tongue, three absolute necessities for any woman who dared exist alone in the Middle Ages. But of course, solitary women in medieval England were a dangerous thing, especially ones who didn't bake pies or smiled demurely at the priest. When crops failed, blame the witch. When marriages broke off, must be her curse. When someone's beer soured, well, you get the idea. Some versions of the tale claim she had once been engaged to a man from the village, but was jilted, humiliated, and left to rot in bitterness. Others suggest she was never accepted in the first place and retreated to the cave to escape persecution. Whichever origin you prefer, she became a target of fear and suspicion. It didn't help that after she moved into the caves, odd things began to happen in the local community. Marriages and engagements broke down, livestock became sick and died. A general unease fell over the village, and it was only a matter of time before that unease was given a name. She was blamed for everything, as was the fashion, and labelled a witch. But medieval England wasn't known for subtle social commentary, so the villagers took their complaints to a higher power. Not the law, not the king, but the church. And so enters our next character, a Benedictine monk from nearby Glastonbury Abbey, Father Bernard. He was summoned to deal with the witch the way the church usually dealt with troublesome women, with holy water and passive aggression. Armed with a crucifix, some Latin, and quite possibly a deeply ingrained fear of feminism, the monk entered the cave. It's said he confronted her deep inside beside the same river that still carves its way through the rock today. Obviously the witch was not pleased. She screamed, cursed him, threw stones, possibly actual ones, possibly metaphysical. In some versions, she conjures a storm within the cave itself. In others, she merely spits at his feet and tells him where to shove his psalter. But the monk, brave soul that he was, held firm. He scooped a handful of water from the river, blessed it, and threw it in the witch's face. He muttered his incantations and called upon the Almighty to rid the land of evil. And then, with a final shriek, the woman raised her hands and turned to stone. Now a scientist might say she was never there at all. that the stalagmite in question just happens to resemble a cloaked figure with one arm raised mid-curse. But let's not be boring. To the villagers, the proof was plain. She was gone. And in her place stood the thing they feared the most. A permanent reminder that vengeance lingers, and magic doesn't always die quietly. That stalagmite, known now as the Witch's Rock, stands to this day, over 6 feet tall, draped in shadow, shaped uncannily like a human figure. And just a few metres away, the petrified remains of her faithful dog, or so the legend says. But the tale doesn't quite end there, because centuries later, a team of archaeologists excavated a nearby chamber and found the skeleton of a woman accompanied by a goat's skull, ceramic fragments and tools. Carbon dating put her remains somewhere between 100 AD and 400 AD, long before the medieval legend, but her presence only deepened the mystery. Was the story built on real bones, or did the land itself whisper her back into existence? The story of the witch might be rooted in medieval folklore, but the hauntings, those are ongoing. You see, it's one thing to have a creepy cave with an interesting legend. It's quite another to have multiple people across decades describing eerily similar experiences, often in parts of the cave with no public access, no trick lighting, and no reason to lie. Let's start with the staff. Guides at Wookey Hole have, on more than one occasion, refused to lock up alone. Some speak of feeling suddenly overwhelmed by emotion near the Witch's Rock. Not fear specifically, more like a wave of sorrow. Others report hearing soft, deliberate footsteps behind them, only to turn around and see an empty tunnel. And then there are the shadows. Several employees have seen dark figures lurking just out of view. Not the playful flickers of torchlights, but tall, unmoving silhouettes that vanish the moment you try to focus on them. One tour guide recounted a particularly unnerving moment when she was setting up for the morning. No tourists, no noise, just her and the cave. As she walked past the Witch's Rock, she heard a low, rasping voice, like someone trying to speak underwater, mutter something she couldn't quite make out. She turned around, but there was nothing there. Her lantern, however, which had been hanging by its hook, was now sitting nicely on the floor. Tourists too have tales to tell. Children have been known to burst into tears near the witch's chamber, even if they weren't told the story beforehand. Several visitors report sudden drops in temperature, even while surrounded by warm bodies and artificial lighting. Some say their cameras stopped working near the figure, only to function properly once they've stepped outside. One family claimed that their young daughter, aged about 6, refused to walk past the stalagmite, insisting that the lady was staring at her, and she didn't mean the tour guide. Naturally, all of this drew the attention of the paranormal community, and Wookey Hole has hosted its fair share of ghost hunters, mediums, and skeptics who left slightly less skeptical. One of the earliest formal investigations took place in the late 1990s. A ghost hunting group conducted an overnight vigil inside the caves. Using EMF detectors, thermal imaging, audio recorders, and an unhealthy disregard for self-preservation, they explored every inch of the chamber where the witch stands. The results? Let's just say, interesting. Several EMF spikes were recorded in the exact area surrounding the stalagmites, despite no obvious electrical sources nearby. One investigator reported being physically pushed, not violently, but firmly, as if someone didn't want them too close. The audio recorders captured faint whispers, though whether they were other team members or echoes is of course debated. Still, one segment stands out. At 3:17 AM, a voice, female, barely audible, is heard saying,
"Don't look at me."
Other paranormal teams have reported similar phenomena. Batteries drained instantly, cold blasts of air in sealed sections, feelings of panic, dizziness, or chest pressure near the witch. It's worth noting every major paranormal group that's visited Wookey Hole has walked away with something they couldn't quite explain. Some call it residual energy, some believe it's an intelligent haunting, and some think that whatever presence lingers here doesn't want to be forgotten. So what are we left with? a limestone cave carved by time, a stalagmite shaped like a woman with her arm raised in rage, bones in the earth, whispers in the dark, and stories that refuse to die quietly. The Witch of Wookey Hole may have been a legend born from fear. She may have been a scapegoat, a healer, a recluse, or perhaps, just perhaps, she really was something darker, something that took root in the rock and waits now in silence. The truth? Well, as with most legends, it probably lies somewhere in the cracks, between the science and the superstition, between the skeletal remains and the voice that told someone not to look at her. But one thing is for certain, Wookey Hole isn't just a cave, it's a tomb, a theatre and a warning carved in stone and whispered by dripping water. The witch still stands there centuries later, her face frozen mid-curse. And if you ever find yourself in that chamber, far from the laughter of tourists, long after the last torch has flickered out, just remember, you're not the first to stand before her, and you won't be the last to feel her watching. Welcome back to Beyond the Grave. Tonight, perhaps unwisely, I've invited a rather infamous guest onto the show. Coming from the cold, dark caves of the Wookey Hole, please welcome tonight's guest, the Wookey Witch.
Unwise indeed, mortal. Most don't visit me twice. The first time is final enough.
Well, I bought some chocolate. Figured it might sweeten the mood.
Your sense of humour is as dry as these rocks. I like it. Speak quickly, I've got bats to herd.
Okay, let's start with the basics. Why a witch, and why here?
Why not? Lovely acoustics, fresh spring water, and privacy, until that meddling Benedictine monk showed up, wagging his crucifix and spoiling the ambience.
Yeah, let's talk about him. The story goes you cursed the couple's romance, caused all kinds of domestic disharmony, and then he turned up to banish you. Any regrets?
Regrets? Darling, I thrived on chaos. They came to me for spells, then got upset when things got spicy. The monk was just the clean-up crew, though I must admit, being turned to stone wasn't on my vision board.
You do have excellent bone structure for a statue.
Thank you. It's limestone chic.
So, let's clear the air. Were you actually a witch, or just an eccentric woman with a goat and a flair for drama?
Labels are for jars. I simply offered solutions. The villagers didn't appreciate nuance or sarcasm. Sound familiar?
Painfully. Have you been haunting the caves since your petrification?
Yes. Haunting, moaning, occasionally rearranging stalactites into rude shapes keeps the tour guides on their toes.
And the monk? Any post-hummus run-ins?
He's long gone. Probably gardening in heaven, though sometimes I whisper rude Latin at the walls just in case he's listening.
Final question. If a visitor stands alone in this cave and whispers your name 3 times, what happens?
They get a strong smell of goat, a cold breeze, and a very bad haircut. Now be off with you, severed soul, before I turn you into a stalagmite.
Understood. No need to rock the boat. That's all for now, folks. From the damp underworld of the Wookey Hole, this is Severed Soul, possibly turning to stone. Signing off. And that's all we have time for today. If you enjoyed tonight's descent into darkness, do give it a like, subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the next chapter in Britain's haunted history. And whatever you do, don't turn your back on the witch. Until next time, I'm your host, Severed Soul.